welcome back to Pike Hiker's Guide to the Universe. This is the Star Citizen universe. And I decided to go ahead and continue on with the voice attack tutorial. And pretty much what we're going to do is, in this one, we're going to kind of close out this section of the voice attack tutorial going over the command we just created. Hopefully you have been following along and you've watched the first three parts here, which is voice attack part 1, 2, and 3, and you have learned how to create a command to call up the maintenance services window and then click the buttons on that window for you automatically just using your voice. Well, some of the points that we didn't talk about is, first off, voice attack. Well, we kind of didn't explain what voice attack is. So voice attack, of course, listens to your speech and converts it to text. And it takes that text and it searches through your command list in your profile that happens to be running. So you, again, you can have multiple profiles. But it's looking to match what you just said to some kind of a command that you have created. It's not verbatim listening to what you said and interpreting it and outputting that to like WordPad or anything like that, unless you create a profile that allows it to do that. It is listening to everything you say, but it's trying to take whatever that is whenever you stop speaking, and it's trying to convert that into a command that you have set up in voice attack under your profile. Each profile has its own set of commands. You could issue the same command multiple times. Like, for example, here I could have, jettison cargo. Well, jettison cargo in one profile could mean press a certain key, and in another profile it could mean press a different key. And those two profiles, would run separately. I would have one running when I'm playing one game, and I had the other one running when I play another game. Voice attack, all it's doing is looking and trying to match whatever it hears you say to some kind of a spoken command. And within that spoken command, you can have variables or different words that can be spoken. We've kind of went over that already. So let's take a look at a command. We're just going to build a command here, just so we can kind of understand some of these concepts that we're talking about. So the command we're going to do is we're going to do press a key 10 times. Let's just write it out, 10 times. That's our command. Press a key 10 times. And what this command is going to do right now is it's going to do what we normally do, which is other advanced. We're going to write the text to the event. Okay, and the value we're going to write is the actual command that it heard. And we'll write that in blue. We'll say OK, and we'll say apply. And we'll turn on listening. Press a key 10 times. Press a key 10 times. Press a key 5 times. So you can see that it recognized, press a key 10 times. That command exists, so it recognized it. And then press a key 5 times. Well, that command doesn't exist in this profile. Therefore, it is not a recognized command. And although it heard you say press a key 5 times, it didn't do anything because it can't. There's nothing for it to do because there's no command by that name. Okay, so voice attack is always looking for a command to run based on what you're saying. And it also put out there exactly what we said in the command. It said press a key 10 times spelled out. Now, we have worked with tokens before, right? When we were pulling up commands in our previous, let's go bring up our sample. When we were working with variables and setting up variables and doing all of those things, we used this token, right? And the token was txt, colon, and then something after it. So pretty much what we're doing is we are setting things up or setting variables. when we're using those kinds of things. So in all programming, pretty much, anytime you're doing coding and you want to use a variable, you kind of have to, the word is declare. Okay, we're declaring that variable, and we're declaring this variable, and we're giving it a name, and we're saying what type of variable it is. Okay, that's pretty common in most languages that you're going to be coding in. Well, that's the same thing we're doing in voice attack. When we come over here and we say, for example, this is our thing. Let's press a key 10 times. The command is just a token. And now we want to set a variable. We would normally go to Other. We would go to Advanced, and we would set the variable. Now we have to determine when we set the variable name what type of variable it's going to be. Is it going to be an integer variable, a decimal variable, a text variable, a true-false variable, a date value or variable, or time variable, something along those lines, all right? So we're doing a set statement, and that's the same thing as declaring. Normally in coding, we would declare a variable as an integer, but here in voice attack, we use the set command. All right, so a lot of the coding's been written underneath and in the engine of this program, and then they created little boxes for us to fill in to do those things. So let's say that I wanted to set 10 to an integer value. So we're going to say I want to set the number 10, the command, to an integer value. First thing we would need to do is we can't really work on just the word 10, right? We have to segment it out. So we would use that command segment. So let's just put this in brackets just for fun. And these are square brackets. So we're going to do square bracket, square bracket. So all that does is segment it out. And other than that, we're not going to do anything. All right. So our command is now going to be press a key 10 times. So let's go into advanced and say we want to set an integer value. And the value is going to, we're just going to set something called the number. And we're going to set it to the value of the segment. So we're going to say this is going, the value, or what is going to be in the number, is going to be a token, right? But we want it, because we're setting an integer value, we want it to be an integer. So we're going to do int. Actually, we're going to do cmd. We're going to do command segment. cmd, segment. And we're going to say set the integer value to command segment. In this case, it's going to be command segment 1, because it's going to be 0 is press a key, 1 is going to be 10, times is going to be 2. So we're going to tell it to convert the text to an integer. We're telling it this variable is going to be an integer, and when we convert this, whatever we're converting, it better be able to be an integer. And we're going to say OK, and we're going to apply that. And now we're going to say press the key 10 times. Press a key 10 times. Press a key 10 times. Right, so we're getting an error back. Okay, the error back is integer token could not be converted. So it's telling us that command segment 1 cannot be converted to an integer because this is not an integer. It's the word 10 written out. But let's change this. So if we say press the key 10 times, that's fine. Let's see what happens. Press the key 10 times. Press the key 10 times. Press the key 10 times. So it's recognizing the command now. It's pressing a key 10 times. Okay, and it's repeating that command back to us. We're not getting an error, but we don't know what it saw there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to write out to our code what it saw, or what the number happens to be. So we're going to go to Other, Advanced, write a value, and the value we want to write is the number. And let's write it in green. And we'll see if this is working. Press the key 10 times. Press the key 10 times. Okay, so it's writing out the number, which is just the variable name. So let's go back in here, go back here, edit it. The value has to be, in this case, a token. So we have to do int, the number. All right, let's do this. Let's go back to the way we were working this. So let's just type out the text. Text the number and see what happens. Press the key 10 times. Press the key 5 times. Press the key 10 times. So now we're getting, it recognizes the command, but it's telling us that variable is not set. Why is that variable not set? We're telling it text the number. We've declared it up here. But when we declared it, we set it to be a type of an integer. Down here, we're trying to read in text type. So these two types are not matching. So the text of the variable, the number, the text type, has not been set. We never declared it as a text. We declared it as an integer. So we have to change the designation here for the type of variable that we're looking for. So let's change this to int for integer. Say OK, apply it. See what happens. Press a key 10 times. It got the command. It now knows and returned the integer value. It can't return the text value because we didn't declare it as text. Whenever we're working with variables, there's two steps we have to work with, okay? Or there's one step that we have to do. We have to declare the variable as a particular type. From that point forward, whatever type we've set it to, whenever we want to recall that variable, we have to use the token of the correct type or convert it from that type to another type before we use that type to read it in. So if I had text here, I would have to convert the integer value of the number to a text value using some kind of a token or some command. Then I could read it in as a text value and change this to text. So just understand, when we're writing it and we're setting, they kind of have to match together. So we have the understanding now that we're declaring our variables, and then we have to have tokens that match what we've declared the variable as. So now let's say up here on this particular variable, we wanted to be able to pick a number between maybe 1 and 10. So up here in our little brackets, we're going to do 1.10. And that's just telling voice attack that we're going to press a number, or in order for this command to trigger, we need to say something between 1 and 10 here. And it's got to be a number, so it's got to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's got to be an integer. Can't be, I don't think it can be 4.5. I don't think that's an integer. So it's got to be a single integer. And we're just declaring it. So let's go ahead and test that. Press a key 5 times. Press a key 3 times. Press a key 10 times. Press a key 1 time. Press a key 18 times. Okay, so we can see here that it recognized it when we said anything between 1 and 10, but when we went to something outside of 1 through 10, we got an unrecognized command. It didn't recognize what that command was. So now we know that we're getting a number, but the goal here is to press a key that number of times. So somehow we have to accomplish that task. We've converted it and we've said we're grabbing some information, right? We don't know what key to press. We just said press a key. Well, does that mean press the a key? Could. Depends on what we set up next. Pretty much we're just saying press a key 10 times or however many number of times. We know that we're going to have a command, right? And one of those commands is going to be to press a key. So we're going to go to key press. And we're going to say key press up here. We're going to set the little button. And now it's going to say, okay, well, what key do you want to press? So now we're just going to press a key. So for this example, we'll just do the B key. So that's the key we're going to press. We're going to press the B key and hold it for 1/10 of a second. And then we're going to release it. So if we were to run this command right now, no matter the number of times we told it to press key, it's really going to only press the key 1 time. Because we've only got the command written out 1 time. If we wanted to press the key 10 times, we would have to write out the key 10 times. But how do we change the code so that it understands, since we're doing a variable number, how many times that we want to press this key? So what we do is we create a function called the loop. Okay, so we're going to go here to Other, Advanced, and we're going to do a loop. And we're going to do a single condition loop. So all we're going to do is create a loop that says, as long as this condition exists, I want you to do whatever is inside the loop. And when the condition no longer exists, I want you to exit out of the loop. And we're using a single condition. You could use compound conditions, and compound conditions would be similar to creating a else if that we've used before when we were dealing with the command that we were building. We were doing else if statements, meaning if it equals this, then you can do this. If it equals this, you can do this. Well, you can add those same type of else if conditions as part of your loop. Okay, so it'd be like doing an else if condition and putting a loop inside of it. When you're creating the loop, you can also make compound reasons as when the loop is in effect and when it is not. But we're going to do a single, so let's do a single condition loop. And our variable name is going to be loop count. So we're going to create a new variable. It's going to be an integer. We could set it to be any of these things, right? We could say run this loop as long as the date and time, or the date is this, right? Anytime it's this date, we want to run this loop. Or anytime the value is true, we're going to run this loop. Or anytime the value is false, we want to run this loop. So we can set up all these different conditions. But in ours, the one we're going to make right now, since we want to go through something a number of times, we're going to use the integer value. Okay? And we're going to say we want to run this loop whenever this variable, loop count, whatever number that is greater than 0. So we're going to run this loop whenever this loop count integer number is greater than 0. Once it hits 0, we want the loop to stop. And then we're going to move this press B key down inside of our loop, because that's the only time we want the B key to be pressed is when our loop condition is met. So why are we using a variable called loop count? Why didn't we just use the variable the number? Well, the reason why you want to use an independent variable name inside your loop is in this particular case, if we were going to keep this command as a separate command with all of these parts as a separate command, I could definitely use the number, okay? And as I could make this variable as my loop rule would be the number, and then I could come through here and I could change the value of the number. Not always good to start changing variable and their value. I can't say that it's bad, but I can't say it's not good practice. Okay, because when you're running code and you're doing any kind of troubleshooting, you kind of want to know the state of all your variables all the time. Because what we want this loop count to do, the reason we're creating this loop, is so that we can count down from a starting number, which is the number, to 0 is what we're trying to get to. And when we do that, for each time we run through this loop, we want to press the B key. So we know we have a starting number is the number, and we know have a loop count. But the loop count has not been initialized. Loop count has no value currently because it doesn't know what it is. We have not declared it. All we did was create a loop, and we're going to be using this variable. So the first thing we want to do is we want to declare this variable, right? We're going to set it. So we're going to come up here under the white, write the integer number to the log. We're going to go to other. We're going to go to advanced, and we're going to set an integer value. And we're going to set the value, which is our variable name, which is going to be loop count, right? Because that's what we're trying to figure out. We want the loop count up here when we originally, before we even get to this loop, we want it to equal another variable that we've set. And the variable that we've set is called the number. So what we're doing in this line is we're setting the value of loop count to match whatever value we handed over to the command through this variable called the number, which is 1 through 10. So we're telling it 1 through 10. We're giving that whatever it was in the command to a variable called the number, and then we're taking loop count and we're making it match that number. That's our beginning. Then we're going to go here. So if we say press a key 5 times, the number is 5. The loop count here is 5. So when I get here, loop count 5 is greater than 0. Press and hold the B key. Go back through the loop and see what happens. Well, in this case, since we have not changed the value of loop count, the loop count would be 5, and it's greater than 0. And it would just constantly go through this loop because we are never changing the value of loop count. What we want to do in this particular case is loop count is the variable that we want to mess with. So we're going to set the value of loop count in our loop. So we're going to go here to press B key. We're going to go underneath that. We're going to do advanced. We are going to set the integer value again. So we're going to do loop count. And we don't want to set it to a particular thing, but what we want to do is compute a new value for loop count. And we want to subtract 1 from it. Okay, so all we're going to do is, if we sent over loop count and we sent it over as a 5, and we started out with the number 5, we're going to start with the number 5, but then right here, we're going to issue a command that subtracts 1 from 5 and changes it to 4. And we're going to put that in our loop. So the first time we go through our loop count is 5, it's greater than 0. We press the B key, we set the loop count to 4, because loop count 5 minus 1 equals 4. We come back up here, loop count is now 4 is greater than 0. We do that process again, we jump it down by 1, next time through it's 3, next time through it's 2, next time through it's 1, next time through it's 0. Once it hits 0, it will not continue on with this loop. It will come down here and jump below the end loop option. And then after the end loop, we are going to do write a value to the event log, and the value we're going to write is we finished the loop. And we'll put that out in, let's say, red. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're creating a looping situation that will run through as many times as we say based on the key press, and it'll press the B key that many times. When it finishes, it will end the loop and it will write, I finished the loop. And we're going to apply that. And then we're going to run it. We're going to see what happens. Press the key 4 times. Press the key 3 times. Press the key 2 times. Press the key 1 time. Press the key 10 times. Okay. So if you were watching closely, you were seeing that the amount of time it took to say press a key, then do this, and then do finish the loop was expanding or contracting depending on the number. Okay, it was either a longer or a shorter period of time. Now, how do we know that it pressed 10 times? Well, we don't. We're not putting anything out into the log file to capture that. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up Notepad. And we're going to use Notepad. So while I'm in Notepad, that is my active window. These commands are always acting on whatever window happens to be active. So as long as I'm listening, voice attack is running in the background, and it's listening, and it's going to perform actions on whatever window or program I happen to have active at any given time. So we're going to make Notepad the active application. Press a key 3 times. Press a key 3 times. Press a key 5 times. Press a key 10 times. Press a key 1 time. All right. So we can see in Notepad that it is actually pressing the key. So it pressed it however many times I said to, right? And we were also getting the output over here to let us know that the program was running. So it's running through the loop, and it's counting down from whatever number we send over to the loop, and it's pressing that key that many times inside of the loop. Okay, so that's how we create a simple loop. So as of right now, we have kind of two ways that we're controlling our program, right? We have the ability now that we know about under other and advanced. We have the ability to do if-then statements. If this equals true, then this will happen. The other way we have is a repetitive way. So if we start a loop and we say, if this is true, loop through this as many times as this condition exists, and then that's how we do that. So we can do repetitive commands, or we can do single commands, or even call up loops based on conditions that we want to check for when we're running our command. Now, an interesting thing about this is this loop itself could technically be its own command, right? We would pass over to the loop the number of times we want it to run through the loop, and then it would do this entire process. Let's do that. Let's take a look at that. So we're going to take this entire section of the loop. We're going to copy it. We're going to say okay. We're going to create a new command, and we're going to call it the loop. And then we're going to paste what the loop does. And that's all this does. Now, I'm never going to call the loop by itself, so I don't want this to ever run, or it wouldn't really matter, but there's no need to run it. So we're never going to call this command, but we can call it from within another command. All this loop does is it's going to expect you to send it the information, right? Loop count. It wants loop count. So whatever command you call this command from has to have a variable called loop count set and initialized, or else this will not run. And it's always going to do the same thing. In this particular case, it's always going to press the B key and then count through. Now, this is where you could make changes, though, and expand the capabilities of this particular loop. I could use variables in here. So it doesn't have to be the B key. I could send it two variables. I could send it to loop count, and I could send it a variable for which key I want it to press. So now when I'm issuing my statement, I could say press the C key 10 times, and it would go through here. And as long as I have the variables set and I'm passing them to this, it would press the C key 10 times. So we would just have to tweak our command, but for right now, we're going to leave it simple. This loop part, so we already have this variable. Evidently, in playing before, we'll just go ahead and look at this since it's already there. It's the exact same thing that we had before. We're starting the loop. Loop count is greater than 0. Press B and hold it for whatever. Set the integer. And end the loop. So that's already out there. So now let's go back to our press the key this many times. And now we want to remove this part of the command because we've already created a command that's going to handle this part. So we're going to delete it out of here. And now we're going to have to put in a way to call that command that we just created called the loop. So we're going to go to other voice attack actions. We're going to execute another command. And the command that we're going to execute is called the loop. And we're going to wait for it to finish before we complete. So what this command now does is it gets the variable for us. So that's pretty much its job. It's going to initially start the command running, and it's going to pass a variable over to the loop. The loop is going to expect that variable, which is loop count. It's going to run. It's going to do its little thing out there. Then it's going to come back, and when it's done with the loop, and move on to the next line. So it's going to do all of these things. It's going to set the integer value to the value of the number. So we know what our loop count, starting loop count is. We're going to run through this execute command, so it's going to go out and run the loop. The loop's going to be running out here however many times we told it to. The loop is going to finish. It's going to come back here and move down to the next line. That's hopefully what's going to happen, and we're going to test it out. So let's bring up Notepad again. All right, so we're going to be in Notepad. Press a key 3 times. Press a key 6 times. Press a key 2 times. So what we're doing now is we're calling out this other command that just runs the loop process for us. All right, so that's pretty handy because now that gives us twofold reasons as to why we would do that. Number one, we can now use this loop command in other commands, right? So we can use this loop as like a function. Whenever we want to press a key so many times, the B key, for example, then we would just call the loop and it would press it however many times. And we could call that from multiple commands. And anytime I want to change what the key was that it pressed, I would just have to go to the loop and I would change the key that it presses. But I could still call it from multiple different commands. And we have one central place to go to change which key is being pressed, as opposed to having the loop in the individual commands and then having go to each individual command and change the character that I wanted it to press, for example. Now, this is not a real world example. All we're trying to do is grasp a concept here of using and creating functions, what we call, they're called functions in other programs, and here they're just called commands. So we would just create a command that provides a certain function to us. So let's look at some other commands that I have, and one of them is called set cruise to impulse. So let's just take a look at what set cruise to impulse does. What set cruise to impulse does is it plays a random sound file, okay, and it picks from one of 3 options to say. Then it goes through and it executes a command called engine idle, and it waits for it to complete. Then, as soon as it gets that command completed, it executes another command to set the engine to impulse speed, and it waits for that to complete, and then it finishes. So really all this command does is play a random sound. And then it calls 2 other commands which do their thing. I have set cruise to 75%. And what does it do? Well, it plays the same. It does exactly the same thing, except for on the execute command. On the second one, it does something different. It executes the engine 75% power command as opposed to the impulse command. So it's just calling a different command. It's playing the first 2 things are exactly the same, setting the engine to idle speed, and then it's executing the engine 75% power. Set cruise to 100%. So you can see all of these are going to call the set engine idle. So now let's look at what engine idle does. Well, engine idle presses the F9 key and holds it for 1/10 of a second and releases it. And it does that 2 times because currently in the game, that is the key presses that you need to set your engine to idle. Supposedly double-clicking the F9 key would do that. Doesn't work in the game, but that's what it's supposed to do based on the key bindings. Okay, so double-clicking the F9 key is supposed to take your engines down to idle, right? Minimum speed. Take your engines all the way down from wherever they're set down to idle. So if in the game Star Citizen decided, well, we're going to change how you set your engines to idle, and instead of it being pressing the F9 key 2 times, it's going to be press the Alt F9 key 2 times. I would, instead of having to go to each one of these commands and if I had this command built in to each one of those, for example, I didn't have it as a separate entity, I would have to go into each one of these and edit this file and change the keystrokes. But since I have it as its own separate entity of what key it's pressing to go to engine idle, I could just come here and change it, and the rest of these would be updated automatically. I wouldn't have to touch them because they're looking at the engine idle speed to figure out what to do to get the engines to go to idle. So that's one reason why you want to do some of these kinds of little functionality commands that just have a very specific function, especially when related to key bindings or things like that in the game. You know, if you're using key bindings and you're saying this command should be doing this, then I would probably make up a key binding. And the other thing I would do here is like under engine idle, for example, we could create a category, and let's call it category key bindings. So now it's in a category over here called key bindings, and I can sort by category. So basically all that's doing is saying from this point forward, anytime I create something that's related to key bindings, then I want to put it in that category. So if I ever have to go back and change my key bindings, I know where to go look, right? And what features I need to fix or touch in order to fix the key bindings. So as you're building programs, you're building from little kind of commands, and you're building bigger commands on top of them. So let's stop with that for right now. That's part one of this process of cleaning up. And then I'm going to take this same concept of creating a loop or something similar to that on the command that we created, which was maintenance services. So I'll see you back here in a little bit with another video. But for right now, that's all we're going to cover. So see you on the next one. And thanks for watching. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. Of course, leave comments, suggestions, anything you want down in the comments, so I can take a look at it, maybe clarify something a little more, clear up something that didn't make sense to you, anything like that. Just reach out to me, and I'll do my best to kind of clear up the situation, because this can be kind of confusing, and you know, maybe I jump around a little bit, but I'm just trying to convey concepts here. So anyway, leave comments. Talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.